Hi, and welcome to Reflections of You, where we create cards and scrapbooks and other projects to spread joy to others. And today we're using the Maymay Chores Can Wait set. I think this is just adorable. I want to show you how to use up your 6x6 paper pads because I'm sure we all have them. And this is just a great technique that doesn't have to be used with the stamp set. So let's get started on that. I want to use the sink here to make a card, and I'm going to use Craft Now, Chores Later sentiment. And I'm going to put these aside, and we're going to look at our 6x6 paper pads. So one of the things I've done is pull two 6x6 papers. And what I want to teach you, which you may have done before, you can do this with couches and clothes and different kind of stamp sets. We're going to make the cabinets out of this wood grain paper, and we're going to make the floor out of this. So we need to find some wallpaper to go with it. And actually, I also thought about making the floor out of this. So we'll see as we go, but I'm going to pull that. That came from here. We're going to make ruffled curtains out of this sheet. And then we just need to look at our sheets and see what we can use to create wallpaper. And, you know, you just pull out your different 6x6 pads and see what you have. This one has things on the front and the back. This would be a real subtle wallpaper. It would be pink. It would look good with these colors. I actually think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a close-up shot of this so you can see the lines in the paper. And hopefully you can see the faint lines in this paper. So let's get started on making our card. I am going to start out with my Misty and a scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to put down my sink because I want to stamp the sink out on white paper to start with, because I'm going to paper pierce and I'm going to color with with Copic markers. So because I'm going to color with Copic markers, I'm going to use my Memento black ink. And I am going to stamp this down onto the white cardstock. Now this is a very easy technique, and I think you'll really love how much it wows people. Alright, so we have that done, but I'm going to now take this out and determine how I want my wood grain to run. I think I'm going to do up and down since this is cabinets. And I'm going to stamp this again using Memento black ink. And this time I want to get a super good impression. So I'm going to rub this around to get a good impression onto this. Now we won't use all of this, but you'll see as we go along. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to get my cutter bug scissors, and I want to cut up to the edge of this paper. And I'm going to cut out just the cabinet part. Which part of this is the counter, and I don't want the counter in there. So I just want the cabinet. And this looks like weathered wood for the cabinet. Now you don't have to go through this. You could just color the cabinet, and I'll show you an example of that next, after we finish this card. But now we can take this cabinet and put it down, and I just want to trim off a little bit here. Now we can take this cabinet and put it down, and we don't have to color this. So it looks like wood cabinets. So we'll just adhere that with a little bit of glue. If you wanted to do your cabinet, your countertop, you could do that too, but it would be a little more difficult. So I think that I will just color that. And I will have chapters in here so you can see the coloring. Now, I don't want the wood on here to show. So I think I want to do that in silver. And I have 2 silver markers. I have one that kind of glistens, which I don't think I want, and this one looks more silver. So with a piece of my scrap paper, I'm going to color on here so I can see what I like. And I do like that. So I'll come in here and I'm just going to color that in so those knobs look silver. You could do black knobs if you think that's good. Alright, so now we're going to Copic color, and I will show you the colors that I'm using. Now that I have the sink colored, I'm going to cut it out. And I'm just going to fussy cut it out. And when you fussy cut this out, we're doing this because we're going to build a kitchen scene, and I want to have wallpaper behind this. So when you do this, you're going to want to build a kitchen scene. And I'm going to keep this for my sentiment. But you just want to be super careful as you're cutting. Now, once you have your sink all colored, and I chose to do rainbow colors, I just thought they were fun colors for the kitchen. You are going to get your wallpaper, and so I'm going to use this as my wallpaper. When I tore it out, it's not good to use that side. I'm going to get my cutter out and cut this down to an A size too. So I'm going to do 5.5 by 4 1/4. So I have that for the front of my card base. And this will cover up the front. But to make this more look like a kitchen, most kitchens have windows behind them. Most sinks, I mean. So I'm going to make a sink. I'm going to make a window, not a sink, a window above here. And I'm going to cut this out with my Gemini. So how I'll do that is I'll place it down where I want it, and then for lining up, and I'm going to use some Post-it note tape to secure it in place. You can use whatever tape you have, but you just need a rectangle to make the window. If you have a die cut that is a window, then I suggest using that. I do not have a die cut. Well, I have a window die cut, but it's just too large for this application. So let me get this die cut and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've die cut my window out, and we will remove the Post-it note tape off. And you can save this to use again when you put it through your machine. I love to find ways to save money, and saving the tape and using it later is a wonderful thing. Alright, so now we have our window, and we are going to cut 2 1/4 inch strips. So on this trimmer, when cutting the 1/4 inch, I am just going to line it up here to use the 1/4 inch on this side. And I'm just reusing the scrap paper that I cut the sink out of. So I'm just really trying to get a lot out of my scraps. So I have cut the last one a little too small. So let me cut that again. Alright. Now let's get our window. So here's our window, and I'm going to flip it over on the back. And I want to put my window strips in because they're like panes. And these you don't have to worry about what the length is, just the measurement. And this will make my window pane. So how I'll adhere my window pane down is I'm going to use score tape, because I find this to be the easiest. So I will line this first one up, and I'm going to flip. I put one piece of score tape down, and I'm going to flip it over, and that looks straight. So I'll flip it back, get me another piece of score tape, and put this side down. And then I will adhere this a couple more times with the score tape just to make sure it stays in place. Then I'm going to take the next window pane, and I want to put that in the center. And I'm not sure, I might be able to use my mat here to center this up. But I'm going to put this in the center. Again, I'm going to eyeball where I think the center is. I'm going to put a piece of tape down, and I'm going to flip it over. And that looks about the center. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I'm going to turn this over and put another piece of tape down. I'm going to flip it back over, and I realize that looks a little crooked. I just can peel up my tape a little bit, move this over, and now that's a little more straight. Alright, so then I can just go ahead and tape it down. So I now have my window pane, and my sink will sit in front of my window pane. Now, the next thing I want to do is take my Tombow marker, because I fussy cut this out. It's going to look so much better if I go over all the edges with this. It just gives it a nice finished look when it goes down on your card. And I'll be popping this up, and this will just be a nice finished look. So I highly suggest, if you fussy cut anything out, just to do this to go around it. Alright, now we're going to, when we look out the window, we have to have a scene. So I'm going to get another 6x6 pad, and I want to look for a scene to put behind my window. Now, scenes that I recommend would be perhaps clouds like this. So you could have clouds outside your window. You could stamp a scene outside your window if you have things to stamp, but I really want to use the paper pad. I could do a forest scene, and I think I might do the forest scene just because I think that looks good. But I want to show you other things that you could do outside of your card. So here's a house scene, and I did this on another one that I'll show you, so it looks like a neighborhood outside the window. But let's do the forest scene on this one because I just think that's kind of cute. So we'll just take our forest paper out and see where we're really using up our 6x6 paper with this project, and in a unique way. Now we will get our trimmer and we will trim this down. We can just make a, we can trim this down so that maybe it's 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And you can save this paper for another project. I love to use my scraps. All right. So we have this, and what's great about putting this down just a little bit smaller is that we don't have to worry about when it lines up. So we can put down some glue on our cardstock here and get our window lined up. All right. And then we'll put this down so we have our forest scene on there. All right. Now when we flip it over, we have our forest scene and we have our sink. And I'm looking at the sink. So now I want to make a floor. And I just need a small amount of wood paper for this. But again, this is a 6x6. So let's cut off a strip. And I think I'm going to use my regular cutter and cut a 2-inch strip for the floor. So here's my 2-inch strip, and that's too much, so I'm going to do 1 inch. But again, I can use this because I can make multiple cards if I want to of this same one and send it out to all my friends. So I'm going to put this down, and then we'll have our sink right here. So this is starting to come together. The surprise element will be we're going to add a curtain, and it's going to be so easy to add a curtain. So I don't have to really even measure this out because I'm going to put it down. We just have it 1 inch. So that's our floor. Move it over so none of the pink paper is showing. All right. Then I'll just snip off this end here on the back. All right, so now we have a floor, we have a window, we have our wallpaper, and we have our sink. So next, let's create our curtain. So I'm going to take this piece of paper, and I have an extra one because I made another card, so I'm going to use that one, but it came from a 6x6. And what I like about 6x6s is there's smaller print. All right, so we're going to take this and we are going to put it in our cutter, and we're going to cut off a 1/2 inch. And I'm not even worried about this white piece of paper at the top because it's not going to go in my project. But this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to get out my score pal. I'm going to put in my paper, and every 1/4 of an inch I'm going to score. So I'm just going to go down and score every 1/4 of an inch. Now if you don't have a score pal, you'll see how this turns out, and you can use it to, okay, that's about all I'm going to score. You can, fold your paper because that's what we're going to do. but I put the scores in it to make it easier. So you're going to take your paper and just fold it up at each of the score lines, because basically we're making a little ruffled curtain to go over top of the kitchen sink. So now we're going to get our card back, and we are going to put our curtain up across our window. So whatever size block you use, that's, you can measure about how far you need to have your ruffles. And I'm going to use score tape again to put this down. And the reason I like to use the score tape on this is I really want it to stay in place, and I find it easier than having the regular glue, because when I get it down I don't want it to move, and I just love the colors. So I'll place that down and push it down, and now we have a little ruffled curtain. We will take our sink and we're going to pop it up using pop-up dots. So I have pop-up dots here, and I'm going to pop up the sink. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you a card where you didn't have to paper pierce the cabinets, or you can just color the cabinet. So I like to pop up the sink because I want to give it some dimension. And so we have the floor, we have the window with our scene, we have our curtain for dimension, and then our sink is popped up for a little dimension right there. I think that's absolutely adorable. And now we can adhere the whole thing down to our A2 card. And so I take our A2 card and put some glue down, and we will get this adhered. And I may not even put a sentiment on the front of the card. I think the scene on the front of the card is the best, and you don't need a sentiment. And you can have the sentiment inside. This sentiment inside, and that is just going to make it so adorable. So here is one I did where I colored the sink, and I used some of the same color palettes here. You can see how it's mixed up. I used a different kind of wallpaper. I have the houses in the background, and I did the same kind of ruffle curtain. This one here looks more like a real cabinet. This looks more like the 1950s metal cabinets. It's all up to you. On this one inside, I cut out the sentiment, and I colored the background just with the same marker that I used on the sink, just to give it a pop of color. But you don't have to do that. We can stick this into our MISTI, and we can just go ahead and stamp down our sentiment and line that up. And I love how it says crafts now, chores later. I think that's so much fun, because who wouldn't rather be crafting than doing chores? I surely would. We do have to do our chores, but I also love to craft. So we'll get that down, and there we go. We have another adorable card. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll be back next time. Thanks for visiting me.